Hi guys, in this lecture we'll learn about the female reproductive system. So we'll learn the basic structures and their functions. Okay, so the reproductive system, the main function is basically the perpetuation of the human species. So the human beings we have been surviving like for millions of years, and this is what we we can mainly take from the reproductive system. Okay, so it permits the perpetuation of species. The female reproductive system is composed by the ovaries. We have a pair here. We have a pair of uterine tubes or fallopian tubes, as you see here. We have one uterus, a vagina, and the vulva, which is basically the external genitalia of female. This is another view of the female reproductive system in the sagittal and sagittal section, in which we can see the position and the location of those different structures. The ovaries here laterally in the pelvic cavity. We have an uterus, which is here in the sagittal section, okay? uh, and then here the vagina, okay, and the external genitalia. The ovaries are considered the female gonads, okay, so they have this size and shape of almonds. They are located near the lateral walls of the pelvic cavity and next to the lateral walls of the uterus. And their main function is the secretion of sex hormones and the production and maturation and the release of egg cells called ova. The ovaries, they are fixed and sustained by ligaments. So the first ligament that you see here is the ovarian ligament or utero-ovarian ligament, this one here. Okay, so the utero-ovarian ligament extends from the lateral wall of the uterus near the attachment of the fallopian tube here, okay, and it extends till the ovaries, the medial surface of the ovary. So this is one ligament. So it's worthy to mention that all those ligaments, they are like extensions of the peritoneum, because the pelvic cavity lies like inferiorly to the abdominal cavity. So these ligaments are different from ligaments that we see in our skeletal system, okay? Because the ovarian ligaments, those ligaments here that we see, they are considered like an extension of the peritoneum. We have the suspensory ligament, which extends from the lateral surface of the ovary to the pelvic walls. Okay, so this goes like up in here. We have the broad ligament, which extends from the lateral pelvic walls on both sides and folds over the internal female genitalia, covering their surface anteriorly and posteriorly. So the broad ligament is like an expansion of the peritoneum, okay? So it wraps all the reproductive organs, okay, like a wrap. And it wraps both laterally, posteriorly, anteriorly, and also inferiorly, okay? And the ovaries, each ovary has some layers, okay? So the most external layer is the cortex, okay? As you see here, cortical region, this one here. And internally, we have the medullary region. It's a bit hard to distinguish these two layers, but one thing that we could consider is that you see here that we have like many follicles in the ovaries. So the follicles, they are present mainly in the cortex. It's hard to see uh, follicles like that in the medulla. In the medulla is we see more often the presence of vessels. Okay, so we have ovarian arteries and ovarian veins here. Okay, in the medulla. There is also the germinal epithelium, okay, which is this external layer in the cortex. There is tunica albuginea, which lies beneath the germinal epithelium, okay? And these follicles that we see here, they're called primordial follicles. So in a female baby, when a girl is born, she's born with approximately 2 million oocytes, which are like the precursors of these cells. 2 millions, I said, but only approximately 500 uh, of these cells will get matured, okay, from the puberty. So if the female has 500 cells, follicles that will be matured, so this will take approximately 40 years, okay, to for the ovulation of these follicles. So that's why, like each month, only one follicle is ovulated. Okay, so only one follicle each month, and during 40 years, so the female has approximately 500 follicles that gets maturation. Okay, so those little ones here, they are primordial follicles. They are immature. Okay, and then in the process of ovulation, these follicles, they grow in size. As you see here, they grow. This yellow here, they grow. Okay, till a certain point in which these follicles is mature enough to ovulate. Okay, so this is the pre-ovulatory follicle, and then it will be expelled by the ovary during the ovulation. Okay, what happens then after ovulation? This follicle exits the ovary. Okay, and the remaining follicle that stays here, uh, it is called corpus luteum. Okay, corpus luteum is the same as yellow body. Okay, so this is basically the remnants follicles after the ovulation. Okay, and then after the corpus luteum, after a couple of days, this will convert into corpus albicans, which is white body. Okay, so corpus luteum, yellow body, okay, and corpus albicans, white body. The white body is basically the degeneration of the corpus luteum. So it gets degenerated and forms like a fibrotic tissue. So this is the corpus albicans, and it will then be absorbed by the organism. So this is like in a few steps how the ovulation occurs. The females have the uterine tubes. The uterine tubes are tubes that are they are muscular tubes. Okay, they have approximately 13 centimeters long, and they present two openings. One lateral opening, okay, to the pelvic cavity, which is close to the ovary, It doesn't touch the ovary, but this is quite close to the ovary. And the other opening opens to the uterine cavity. Okay. The main function of the uterine tubes is the fertilization. Okay, so the male gamete uh, travels here through the uterus and will reach the uterine tubes. When the follicle released by the ovary gets here inside the tube, the fertilization occurs here. Okay. The uterine tubes have some segments or regions. They are called, this one here is the fimbria. The fimbria is part of the infundibulum, is the extremities of the infundibulum. So the fimbria basically, during the ovulation, the fimbria gets swollen, so it swells. They are like little projections of the infundibulum, and they swell during the ovulation. When they swell here, they grow in size, and then they almost touch the ovaries. Okay, so they get really close to the ovaries and to the ovary, and then it catches the released follicle. Okay, so the released follicle is caught by the fimbria, and then it travels through along the uterine tube. So the infundibulum is this area here, is like the dilated area of the uterine tubes. Then the ampulla is the longest part of the uterine tube. Then there is the isthmus, and the interstitium. The interstitium is also called the intramural portion, because this is a connection with the uterus. Then the uterus is located in anteversion at the lower pelvis. So anteversion is the same as anteflexion. And it's located posterior to the bladder and anterior to the rectum. So this is the inferior view of the uterus, of the pelvic cavity. The uterus is right here in the center. And anteriorly to the uterus, we have the urinary bladder, and posteriorly the rectum. The uterus, and this other picture shows a lateral view. The uterus here in the middle, urinary bladder in front of it, and the rectum posteriorly to it. The uterus is sustained by some ligaments. So those ligaments, they avoid movement of the uterus inside the pelvic cavity. So this one here is the transverse cervical ligament, which is a ligament that is lateral to the uterus and attaches to the lateral pelvic wall. The pubocervical ligament is this one here, anterior to the uterus. Okay, and the uterosacral ligament is posterior to the uterus. Okay, so according to their names, you know their insertion, right? So this goes from the uterus to the pubis, and this in this one here posteriorly goes from the uterus to the sacrum. The main function of the uterus is to receive the ovum from the fallopian tubes, and it also provides a place for its implantation. So when fertilization occurs in the fallopian tubes, like after approximately 7 days, the fertilized ovum travels all along the fallopian tube, okay, and it goes to the uterus, descends to the uterus, where the ovum will be implanted to the uterine cavity. There is another ligament here that I haven't mentioned before. This is, well, in this view, you can see this is a superior view, okay, that you can see here in the center, the uterus, the previous ligament that I mentioned before, in green, the uterus sacral, the sacrum is here, okay, the transverse cervical ligament, which runs laterally to the uterus, to the pelvic walls, and the pubocervical ligaments, which goes here anteriorly to the pubis. There is another ligament in red that you see here, which is the round ligament of the uterus. So the round ligament is within the broad ligament of the ovarian. Remember that in the previous slide. So this broad ligament is like the superior part of the broad ligament, is the round ligament. The round ligament runs here from the posterior superior aspect of the uterus, and it goes through the inguinal canal. Okay, so this goes here to the inguinal canal, and then from the inguinal canal, it it will reach the external female genitalia in the labia minora of the external genitalia. So this is like the pathway of the round ligament from the uterus passing through the inguinal canal that you can see here, part of it, the inguinal canal, and it ends in the external female genitalia at the labia minora. The uterus has some regions. The superior region is called fundus. This area here is called the body of the uterus, and the most inferior region is called cervix. So the cervix is also the neck of the uterus. Okay, so those are the areas, and those are the layers that constitute the uterine wall. So the uterine wall is basically composed by three layers. The endometrium, which is the most internal layer, is a mucous membrane full of glands. There are many, many glands inside here, the endometrium. The myometrium. Myometrium is the intermediate layer, which is the thickest one. Okay, so the myometrium corresponds to 90% of the total mass of the uterus. And the perimetrium is the most external layer, is the outer serous membrane, and it's continuous with the peritoneal lining. The vagina. The vagina is another structure of the female reproductive system. Okay, so it is a muscular tube that you see here that connects the cervix of the uterus. Here is the cervix of the uterus to the external genitalia here, inferiorly. So located inferiorly to the uterus, and the main functions of the vagina are that it serves as a secretory duct, because there are many glands here that secrete substances for lubrication. Okay. The function is sexual intercourse, and also acts as the birth canal. The histology of the vagina is basically composed by two layers. The mucosa layer is this layer here, composed by non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. This is loose fibroelastic tissue, okay, connective tissue. There is a lamina propria and the loose connective tissue here. And the muscularis layer, which is an inner circular and outer longitudinal smooth muscle. So the vagina is very elastic. So these components of these histology components provide like elasticity to the vagina. So the vagina has a length of approximately 9 centimeters, but this tissue is so elastic, it can uh, reach like 12 centimeters when it's like totally elastic. Okay. The vulva is the external genitalia. Okay, so this is also called pudendum. Uh, and this here we can see the external genital organs in the female. So the mons pubis is this area here, which is mainly composed by adipose tissue over the pubic symphysis. Then there is the labia majora, okay, that you can see here, more externally, the labia majora, and the labia minora, more internally, okay. So the labia majora is squamous epithelium, homologous to the male scrotum, contains pubic hair, adipose tissue, and glands, sebaceous and sudoriferous glands, okay. Secreting sweat here. And the labia minora is like two folds, internal folds that you see here of skin, okay, medially to the labia majora. It contains sebaceous glands, basically. The vestibule is this area here, the opening that you can see. You see these arrows here. So this is the vestibule. The vestibule actually is everything that contains here inside in this space between the labia minora, um, well, internally to the labia minora. So from the labia minora to the other labium minor, so have the two. So this space is called vestibule. In the vestibule, we can see the urethral opening here, anteriorly, and the vaginal opening here more posteriorly, okay? There are other structures that you can see here in the next picture. The clitoris is a erectile tissue at the anterior junction of the labia minora. It is responsible for sexual pleasure. So this is homologous to the penis. So this is the penis that you see here. And this here in B is the clitoris. Okay, so as you see, the shape, the structure is very similar. Okay, so this is what gives pleasure in the female reproductive system. The hymen that you can see here is another tissue that is elastic as well, elastic tissue, which covers the opening of the vagina. So there are different variations of hymens. The annular hymen, would be like considered like the most normal type. And there are some other variations, okay? The septate hymen, which presents like a septum here in the middle. The cribiform hymen is like a perforated hymen, which has those perforations. And the last one that you see here, the parvus introitus, this is like the condition of the hymen after birth. So those different types of hymen, like anormal types, they could be like treated by surgery in the most worst cases, or even by normal sexual intercourse or masturbation. This hymen here can be ruptured, and then the septum that you see here can be ruptured after like normal sexual intercourse or even masturbation. But only in the worst cases, surgery can be indicated in these cases here. So this is an overview of the female reproductive system, and we will keep up in the next video lecture with another subject. Thank you for watching.